is a great day. This has become a tradition between MAK and NSYSU, and I believe this is the 5th year. And don't worry, you are all do fine. MAK is supposed to have language advantages, and NSYSU is supposed to have science advantages. But we'll see how this plays out. And before we start, I need to say a little bit about the rules because time constraint. Each speaker only has 2.5 minutes, and my assistant Christy will keep a timer. When the first bell goes off, that means you have already spent 2 minutes and 15 seconds. So, and you need to wrap up. So when the second timer bell goes off, I will stand up in the back. That means, you need to leave the podium. Okay. And also, we go by, each team has 2 pairs that's supposed to deal one subject. So we'll start with first, proposition constructive. That's red team, that's us. Today we're debating that evolution is a fact, okay? And then followed by first opposition constructive. That's MAK, your blue team, okay? You're debating that evolution is a fiction. And then followed by first opposition rebuttal, and then first preposition rebuttal. Okay. Then we'll go through a cycle of 4. So, and you just realize you just look if you're not sure if you're supposed to be on, just look at the color. Okay, you're blue color, that's your turn. Red color, that's your turn. Okay, and last advice: don't be too ambitious. And supposedly you have all rehearsed. So, and the timing is very important. So articulate your point. Okay. And that's the most important thing. And be yourself and just enjoy this event. And this is a special form of learning. I think you will, in the future when you look back, you see how special this is. Okay, thank you. I wish you all the best. Okay, now we have first proposition constructive.
Hello everyone, I'm Lily, and today my team and I take positive side of the theory of evolution. And at first, my partner and I will go for the instruction. In biology, evolution can be defined as any change in the heritable traits within a population across generations. We don't know what the first life was from, or how it came to be, but the simple process of reproduction with variation over billions of years looks to be responsible for all the diversity of life we see today. All living things can make copies of themselves, but they do so imperfectly, because when DNA is being copied, errors can occur which modify the DNA code. This is what we call a DNA mutation. These mutations, which happen completely on accident and randomly to any part of a DNA strand, can produce variations in the body and function of the creature who inherits the modified DNA. Small variations can build up over generations to create dramatic differences in the body form and function of living creatures. And as researchers highlight, all mammals evolved from an ancient zoo-like creature. But who was the breeder? In the mid-1800s, Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace discovered that a breeder is not necessarily needed. There is another force capable of guiding random evolution to produce order and complex function. They called it natural selection. Thank you.
So do I turn it around? Hi, my name is Grace, and today I am the first speaker for the team that is arguing against the proposition that evolution is fact. And our opponents say that evolution is fact because evolution is scientific. But what is a major cornerstone in this theory of evolution? It is time. Evolutionists maintain that organisms needed all the time, like billions and billions of years, to evolve into what they are today. And what is one way scientists think that they know this time exists is by radioactive isotope dating, which is basically the process of a radioactive substance decaying into a stable daughter substance. A popular example of this would be carbon-14, and a lot of people know about it. But now let me tell you about Sunset Crater in Arizona. It's historically known to have erupted 1,000 years ago in AD 1065. And it was dated by a type of radioactive isotope dating called the potassium argon method. But was it found to be 1,000 years old as it is historically known? No, it was found to be 210 times that. But why would this happen? Why would a trustworthy system of radioactive dating give out on us like that? It's because one of the assumptions that scientists make when they are doing this radioactive isotope dating is that no daughter material was present. And that was what threw this measurement off in this case. Too much of the argon was present, and that made the rock look a lot older than it actually was. But scientists didn't just make this assumption in this case. They make it on all the radioactive isotope dating samples they do. They think that they know how much unstable material there was in the first place and how much daughter material was there in the first place. They think they know that nothing like an earthquake or a lava flow or volcanic eruption could have disrupted this process. But they don't know. If scientists can't tell us about rocks that are historically proven to be this much years old, how can they tell us about prehistoric rocks when no one was around to write down when this fossil was buried in the ground? How can they tell us about that if their tests can't even tell us about things that we already know to be true? From this, we can see that evolution has a faulty sense of time. And without an accurate measurement of time, like without the time that to evolve over millions and millions of years, the theory of evolution falls apart. Thank you.
First, opposition rebuttal. Opposition rebuttal.
So I will be arguing for the side that states that evolution is not fact, and I would like to start off by responding to the statements that the opposing team has made. First, they have defined evolution as a change of traits and have specifically stated that evolution does not necessarily have to include how life started or why life started or how that even happened. Well, I would like to state that evolution is a very broad term. It includes things like abiogenesis, macroevolution, microevolution. And so if you want to take out some things, you can't just say, well, here's how we define it. You have to give specific reasoning to why you don't think those things should be included in the definition of evolution. So I would like to ask the opposing team to specify and clarify why they don't think how life started is a relevant topic when it comes to the definition of evolution. Also, they have stated that DNA has errors in copying and that it causes mutation. But we would just like to point out that this is not our side that takes evolution is not fact, is also in a way supporting the fact that creation is fact, and we would just like to state the fact that these things can also be explained in our point of view. I would like to proceed to affirming my teammates' points. Like she said, evolution is based on the idea that it takes a long time for these organisms to evolve. But one of the ways they use to date the time is radiometric dating, and it assumes a lot of things that don't necessarily that aren't necessarily true. For example, they assume the conditions in the beginning. They assume that the conditions today are identical, exactly identical to the conditions of early Earth. However, that might not be the case. No one was there to observe it. Therefore, that statement does not stand. You don't know if early Earth was really like the Earth we know today. Also, the lack of contamination. Some substances like lava and water can influence the material that they date and cause the dating to be off. And this can be, there are a lot of ways that the dating can be off, like how my partner said, the rocks that were dated in the crater were incorrectly dated. So we think that time is not a valid part of the argument, and that's why we don't think evolution stands very well. Thank you.
First, composition rebuttal.
Hello everyone, I'm Anne. After my teammates' introduction to evolution, I'm going to talk about our arguments. Our arguments in support of the evolution theory are divided into two parts: the historical background of the evolution and the relevant evidence or phenomenon. To begin with historical background, we will first explain what is the natural selection mechanism of evolution and take the big experiment as an example. Although there was a lot of controversy after Darwin proposed the evolution theory in 1883, scientists have continued to have new evidence to support this concept. Especially, the knowledge of genetics was proven. They could interpret the theory from the view of biology and strengthen the foundation of evolution. Thus, we will point out 6 relevant evidence to support the theory of evolution: fossil record, geographical distribution of the species, anatomy record, gene evidence, atavism, and artificial selection. Thank you.
The next pair of the red team can move on. Second, proposition construction.
Good morning everyone, I'm Debbie. Today my teammate and I are going to talk on natural selection. And let me explain how does it work. Why did some species become extinct but the others survive? By observing different species, Darwin believed that Darwin found there is variation in the population. Within this population, every individual must compete for limited resources, such as food, water, space, and other necessities. And third, it's caused that some individuals can untimely die, and the others, having a variation, can stay alive, so that they have an advantage in reproducing successfully. Because the advantage individuals pass on their trait more frequently to their offspring. The offspring will have a best chance to adapt the environment. Then the species will have evolved along with time. In the origin of species, Darwin believed there are 3 biological conditions for natural selection. And first, there are many genetic variations among individuals, and these variations are heritable. Second, because of the individual difference, the survival rate of every individual is different. Finally, only those who are suitable for the environment can survive and pass their trait to the offspring. In conclusion, I think evolution is fact, and my teammate is going to expand more evidence of natural selection. Thank you.
Second opposition construct.
Good afternoon, and I'm Anna Lee from Morrison Academy Kaohsiung, and our team firmly believes that evolution is not a fact. Now I'll be talking about fossil records and how it does not match up with evolution. One of the greatest outbursts that has happened was the Cambrian explosion. This was when diverse species began to rapidly appear. Such fossils provided important evidence of animals that otherwise left no trace of their existence because of they lacked hard body parts that could become fossilized. This disproves evolution's theory. Evolution is supposed to be a gradual change in species until they turn into a specific kind of organism. With this, how then do you explain why this sudden outburst of new species started to rapidly appear? While this event that happened disproved the evolutionary theory, creationism has many fossil evidence that proves to be true. An example such as the flood. Because of this flood, hills, mountains, and everything were swept away because of the massive amount of water. Among geologists, they have found on every continent fossils of sea creatures in rock layers which today are above sea level. They have found these fossils in rock layers in the Grand Canyon and also in the Himalayas mountains. The fossilized sea creatures and plants found in rock layers thousands of feet above sea level are evidence to the ocean waters that flooded over the continents. A famous person that was mentioned during this event was Noah and his ark. There has been archaeological evidence and people that have found parts of Noah's ark in Turkey. Another thing that was significant to this flood was that there were cracks found in the ocean. These cracks are the number one evidence that the flood occurred, and the opening of the grounds underneath the ocean could only be done by God. Because evolutionists lack evidence to show what really happened during the Cambrian explosion, and the fact that there has been so many marine fossils found all over the continent, this shows that creationism is true. Thank you.
Second, opposition rebuttal.
Good morning, Honorable Judge, worthy opponents, and members of the audience. My name is Annabelle Chen from Morrison Academy Kaohsiung, and today we're here to debate about the resolution of whether or not evolution is a fact. Our team, as the negative team, firmly believes the fact that creation is the answer to the beginning of the world and its life inhabitants. Moving on to my main point, the fossil record, and how it might disprove evolution and be in favor of creation. The fossil record never showed evidence of how a particular type of animal can transform into another, distinct, different type of animal. Yes, different fossils from different time periods may show that fossils show similarity, but it doesn't represent relatedness. It doesn't mean that an animal from a long time ago that was fossilized can be related to another. They might show similarities in body structure, but doesn't mean that they're related. For example, a cat and a dog may have similar lifestyles, living in like environments, and have similar body structures, given the fact that they are both domestic house pests. But when cats reproduce, they reproduce kittens, and when dogs reproduce, they give birth to puppies. Those are two very different babies. They might be two animals, but they show similarity between each other, but that doesn't mean they're related. So our team and I firmly believe that evolution is not a fact. Thank you.
Second, proposition rebuttal.
Hello everyone, my name is Jill. Now I want to illustrate an example of natural selection. Survival of the fittest is the essence of natural selection. Take Darwin's finch. where was found at Galapagos Islands, for example. The first condition of evolution is that every singles have difference at first, like this. Some Darwin's finch have sharp, thin beak, like this. They then conductively eating insects. Some have big, thick beak, like this, which were suitable for crushing seeds. The others' beak were between the two, like this. They can eat small seeds and can also eat insects. Furthermore, it will be affected by terrain and food. The Galapagos Islands are made up of 7 large islands and 23 small islands, some of which have more hard seas on the island, like A Island. Some are insects, like B Island, and some the seas are as much as insects, like C Island. Then natural selection happened. At the beginning, Darwin's finch, they migrate to the Galapagos Islands, naturally and randomly fly to different environments. For example, on the A Islands, they have many hard seeds, less insects. Coast birds, they have sharp, thin beak, not easy to survive. Then they will migrate to other places or by natural elimination. This phenomenon can also be applied to B and C islands. So different islands will have their different size, shape of beak of Darwin's finch. That's how natural selection works. Thank you.
The third proposition constructed.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Min Yo. My teammate and I believe that evolution is a fact, and I'm going to provide some fossil evidence which supports evolution. The first is Tiktaalik. It is an animal living in Devonian period. At that time, there is few or no animal living on land. According to the fossil record, even scientists found that Tiktaalik has a scale, a turnable neck, and a fin. Also, scientists found that Tiktaalik don't have the gill cover, which means it can't breathe underwater. So it must live in shallow water or on land. So that's why no doubt Tiktaalik is a pioneer of terrestrial organisms. Another critical discovery is Archaeopteryx. It is a bird-like organism living in the age of dinosaur. Its skeleton structure is similar to raptor, and which is the kind of the dinosaur. The crown, teeth, and the tailbone are also similar to dinosaur. Because the only creature which has the feather is bird, its ever-seen feather make it difficult to be classified as a dinosaur. The importance of this fossil is that it has feather, and this is the first fossil recorded organism which has such a significant feather of the bird we know. So that's why Archaeopteryx would be considered as one of the bird's very early ancestors. According to the discovery of many species like Tiktaalik and Archaeopteryx, we note that the biological evolution is sequential instead of being chaos. And even if the change of the organism is complex and diversity, there is still a tendency to follow. Thank you.
Opposition constructed.
Hi, my name is William, and my teammate and I firmly believe that evolution is false. So as my teammate said before, dating is an important part of evolution, and uniformitarianism is important to dating, but it might be false, in making carbon-14 dating and radiometric dating and other types of dating methods inaccurate. So in geology, uniformitarianism is a theory that changes in the crust of the Earth during geological history have resulted from uniform process, and geological processes that presently modify the crust are the only activities that have ever done so in the past. So if this is true, why is no one denying that the possibility of a comet or a major comet or asteroid colliding with the Earth in the past? And it also doesn't explain early Earth, because if Earth was like the same as it is today, then how did the Earth ever form? So this ties back to radiometric dating, because in order for it to be valid, the world has to operate the same. Because carbon-14 has to decay at the same rate it does now, and so therefore, if uniformitarianism is invalid, that means radiometric dating is also inaccurate, and this disproves the time factor of evolution, which is an important part of evolution, which disapproves evolution. Thank you.
Third, opposition rebuttal.
Good morning, and my name is Joy, and I will be talking about uniformitarianism and adding on to what my partner said earlier. So the definition of uniformitarianism is the assumption that the same natural laws and processes that operate in the universe now have always operated in the universe in the past, and it applies everywhere else, which basically what happened then has to happen now for the Earth to remain constant. And as my friend mentioned, this ties back to radioactive dating because it has to decay by the same half-life to get the accurate dating that we have. But what if it doesn't? There are sudden changes, and the Earth may not actually be that old. Like earthquakes, for instance, they are sudden. Yeah, we can know that they cause damage, but we can't predict exactly when. We can just say, oh, this happened, so then earthquake. So you can't exactly predict, which means the processes aren't always the same. Or we have a leap year, so then the years and the days get messed up and bleh. So in order, I'm thinking, and carbon-14 also only has a half-life of about 5,000 years. Whatever. So maybe if that's true, then wouldn't it have run out by now? And even if we had traces of it, wouldn't it have been gone by millions and millions of years? And it can really only be used, this particular type of dating, to date living things. So then if we look at fossils, maybe it's not accurate. You can't really use it to do that. So in conclusion, uniformitarianism isn't totally reliable because the world changes and places shift. So in conclusion, we believe that creation is a fact. Thank you.
Opposition rebuttal.
Hi everyone, I'm Cynthia. The theory of evolution is scientific fact, which literally is the truth in science. People claim that the theory of evolution is fiction, as the missing link has not been found. Just because people misunderstand the concept of missing link to be mean one great empty gaps where man's perhaps another species ancestor should be. To be frank, this notion is absurd. In fact, fossil record fills gap and missing link in a chain of evolution due to previous incomplete data collection. Since the 1920s, there have been literally hundreds of well-dated intermediate fossils found in Africa that were transitional species leading from apes to human in the last 6 to 7 million years. There's a host of human transitional fossils like Sahelanthropus tradensis and Homo rudolfensis, and a lot more. To be honest, we have more fossils evidence that shows human evolved from non-humans than we have fossils evidence that shows Tyrannosaurus Rex really existed. Above all, in all fossils we discovered, there are no single fossils showing that evolution is wrong. Every fossil that we have been shown to be a transitional fossils. Fossils have common traits with other fossils in a more primitive way or a more advanced one. There's no any extreme deviation that does not fit the theory of evolution. You may ask that, does this mean we have the complete fossil record precisely show transitional form of every single species? The answer is a definite no. It is impossible to have fossil evidence that transfers the great history of Earth where there are billions of generations that have lived here. It is not necessary to conduct a complete fossil record from every organism, what evidence we currently have is sufficient to show our observation of fossil record perfectly coincides with the theory of evolution. When people claim evolution is a fiction, as the missing link still have not been found, showing that they understand little to nothing about evolution. Thank you.
Next, the chair of the MAK, NSYSU speaker. Go on. Okay, the fourth, composition construction.
Hello everybody, my name is Anderson. Today my teammate and I are going to talk about the distribution of fossils that support the evolution theory. The history of marsupial provides an example of how the theories of evolution and continental drift can be combined to make predictions about what will be found in the fossil record. The earliest marsupial fossils are about 18 million years ago and found in North America. By 14 million years ago, the fossil shows that they could be found throughout South America, but there is no evidence of them in Australia, now where they predominated. That's strange. But the theory of evolution predicts that the Australian marsupials must be descended from South America, and the theory of continental drift says that between 30 to 40 million years ago, America and Australia were still part of the southern hemisphere, supercontinent of Gondwana, and they were connected by the land that is now part of Antarctica. So therefore, combining the two theories, scientists predict that marsupial migrate from South America across Antarctica to Australia. So this hypothesis led paleontologists to find marsupials in Antarctica that lived 35 to 40 million years ago. So I believe the evolution theory is fact because the distribution of marsupial fossils makes sense with the theory of continental drift. Thank you.
The fourth, composition construction.
Good morning, Honorable.
Sorry.
Maybe.
Good morning, honorable judges, worthy opponents, and members of the audience. My name is Stephanie, and my team and I firmly believe that creation is true. For our world to make sense, everything must have an almighty creator. To start with my argument, I would like to state this verse in the Bible. In Job 12, verse 7 to 9, it says that, but ask the animals, and they will teach you, or the birds in the sky, and they will tell you, or speak to the earth, and it will teach you, or let the fish in the sea inform you, which of all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this. We live on a planet that has an axis that is tilted about 13 degrees, which is why we have 4 seasons. The Almighty Creator has planned this perfectly. At the equator, the Earth rotates at a rate of 1,000 miles per hour. If this speed is reduced to 100 miles per hour, our days will be 10 times longer than it is now. As a result, all creatures on this planet will be burned to death. If the night is 10 times longer, all creatures will freeze to death, which implies that God or someone powerful put effort in designing Earth. The human body can also prove that the creation is a fact, not a theory. Our human bodies are the most amazing thing. If scientists were to build a machine that contains all the systems we humans have, it would have to take up the whole city space in order to do that. In a human body, it contains circulatory system, digestive systems, and nervous systems. The center of the circulatory system is the heart. Even though it is not that big, but its muscle is a tough and effective pump. A normal heart beats every 72 times and it delivers 18 pounds of blood per minute. so that the daily delivery will be as high as 12 tons or more than 4,000 tons per year. It can maintain 60 to 80 years of good function. Unlike the puns we humans make, it does not have to be fixed repaired under normal circumstances. So after all these, would you still say that all these things just appear from nowhere? Of course not. If it were to be one more or less thing added to this perfectly designed and crafted universe, we wouldn't be living in such a life perfect. In conclusion, I firmly believe that creation is true because it doesn't make sense for our world to be designed perfectly without an omnipotent supernatural being. Thus, creation must be true. Thank you.
The fourth opposition rebuttal.
Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Deborah, and today we are here to debate the resolution that evolution is fact. My team and I strongly believe that this is false. First of all, I would like to rebut the point that my opponent has made. They said that marsupials were found 80 million years ago in North America, and whereas today they're also in Australia. But as my previous speakers have pointed out, dating may not be correct. It may not be reliable, because dating relies on the concept of uniformitarianism, which states that everything has to have been the same before today and will be the same after. But we don't know it was the same before because we weren't there to observe it. So how do you know that the dating is correct? So you don't know that 80 million years ago there were marsupials in North America. And also according to their theory of continental drift, the continents started drifting apart, presumably after the marsupials spread. But if the dating is wrong and they were in North America later, then they wouldn't have been able to spread over the ocean because continental drift, according to them, has moved the continents so that there were oceans between them. So how would the marsupials have been able to spread from North America to Australia? Now I would like to elaborate on the point that my previous speaker made. They gave us many examples of design. And they said that with so much design, there has to be someone who designed it because there is so much irreducible complexity in this world. Irreducible complexity is what they said, that if one thing was taken away or one thing was added, everything would go wrong. This is an argument called the teleological argument. It basically states that if there is design, there must be a designer. We have seen design. Our previous speaker, Stephanie, has given us so many examples of design. To add a little more to examples, there are cilia and flagella. They help cells transport themselves, and they are so complex, just like all the examples Stephanie has given, that if you take away one part, they won't work anymore. How could something this complex have come together without a designer? Just like if you see a clock in a field, the clock couldn't have come together by itself, obviously. It must have been a designer. Therefore, we believe that because the world displays design, there must be a designer. Thank you.
The fourth proposition rebuttal.
Hello everyone, I'm Claire. My team and I believe the theory of evolution, and I'm going to talk about the evidence of geographical distribution. Another clue to patterns of past evolution is found in the natural geographic distribution of related species. It is clear that major isolated land area and island groups often evolve their own distinct plant and animal communities. For instance, before humans arrived 60 to 40,000 years ago, Australia had more than 100 species of kangaroos, koalas, and marsupials. Click this icon to hear the preceding term pronounced. But none of the more advanced terrestrial placental mammal click this icon to hear the preceding term pronounced, such as dogs, cats, bears, and horses. Land mammals were entirely absent from the even more isolated islands that make up Hawaii and New Zealand. Each of these places had a great number of plant, insect, and bird species, that were found nowhere in the world. The most likely explanation for the existence of Australia's, New Zealand, and Hawaii's mostly unique biotic environments is that the life forms in these areas have been evolving in isolation from the rest of the world for millions of years. Because the new species evolved, I believe the theory of evolution is true. Thank you.
The fifth proposition constructed.
No.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff. My teammates Tony and I are going to talk about the anatomy evidence of supporting theory of evolution. When studying the theory of evolution with anatomy, we can find that the structure of organs of some creatures are similar, but the function is different within each other, which is called homologous bones. The environments where they live induce them to involve suitable tools, which makes them more competitive. And anatomical similarities between different groups of creatures, some of which live in different environments from the others, strongly support the theory of common ancestors. For example, like all placental mammals, dolphins have lungs and single jaw bones. They also gestate their offspring. The simplest explanation for these similarities with dogs, cats, and primates is that dolphins are more closely related to other mammals than they are to the fish they live among. Another example of analogous anatomy across species is the tetrapod limb. The single form of this structure is a single long bone attached to a shoulder and at the end of an elbow. And below the elbow, two smaller bones extend to a wrist, which terminates in small bones for fingers and toes. This structure is common to observe among mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians. That is to say, the common ancestors of these creatures entered in different environments, respectively, at the past, and gradually evolved various abilities to survive, but preserve their original structures. And that's all. Thank you.
The fifth opposition constructed.
Good morning, honorable judges and worthy opponents, and the members of the audience. Today I'm going to talk about creation, which is a subject that me and my team strongly agree with. To start off, I would like to talk about the complexity of creation. First of all, there are no simple explanations for the happenings of the universe. The complex nature and enormity of the universe and the ecosystem is not simple. The idea of the complexity of the world to most evolutionists is somehow a scenario of how a tiny molecule could evolve into a replicating protein, an amoeba, large beast, and eventually a human with a complex brain. Chance in this sense refers to events without cause. Thus, chance implies the absence of both a design and a designer. Imagine that The Last Supper painted itself without Leonardo da Vinci. Now consider an even more absurd assumption that an eye, an egg, and the earth, each in its vast complexity, are only functions of random chance. Ironically, Darwin himself found it hard to accept the notion that the eye and the earth are merely things that happen without any explanations. It's just like the world couldn't just happen with an explosion. Evolution also cannot explain the complex synchronization process that the shell of a developing egg to form the calcium that is stored inside the bones of a bird's body. The cell is not only a protection for covering the egg, but it also provides system that helps the egg function. A fertilized egg is among the most organized, complex structures in the universe. In conclusion, evolution cannot explain the complexity of creation. Like an egg or an eye, the world is a masterpiece of precision and design that could not have come into existence by chance. Thank you.
Fifth opposition. Rebuttal.
Honorable judges, worthy opponents, and members of the audience. Today we're here to debate whether creationism is true or not. And my team and I firmly believe that it is true. Yeah. To start off with my speech, I would like to rebut my opponents. So, the second speaker on the evolution side has explained how animals have come into existence to the modern world by natural selection and DNA mutation. But let me ask you a question. What made the DNA in the first place? DNA is so complicated based on the genomes and structures that it is impossible to replicate. Natural selection assumes that living things had already come from existence, so it does not explain how DNA come to existence. My previous opponent have stated that the similarity in body structures in different organisms must have meant that there is a common ancestor. And that still does not explain how that common ancestor, that original ancestor, came into existence the first place. So, and now I'm going to support the previous speaker's point in irreducible complexity. In the theory of abiogenesis, life was created out of no life. Since technology has advanced dramatically from billions of years ago, can't technology replicate multicellular organisms? Evolution states that things in nature are said to be a product of chance. It seems that our technology would be able to improve upon things that happen by chance, but can't replicate. An example is a bird. Men use birds' features to make an airplane, but can never have created an actual bird. This also supports the point on what Erica has stated, that life is too complex to happen by chance. Therefore, if our technology cannot create life, there must be an intelligent creator. Thank you.
Yes, fifth. Proposition. Rebuttal.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Tony. And I want to talk about anatomy record. And let's talk about another gut organ first. And you may ask, why do some animals have similar outward, but research shows that they are not close relatives? And for example, birds and bats, both of them can fly, and they look alike. Why they are not the same? It's because they have evolved independently. Their wings are substantially dissimilar in construction. The bat wings are main blade stretched across 4 fingers, and while the bird wings are made of the feathers which are attached to the forearm and the bones of the wrist and hand. Bats and birds are different, and their ancestors are also different. But the living environment may then evolve into similar outward. The theory and this evolution is called convergence, and therefore the theory of evolution is established. And next, let's talk about vestigial organ. It's also considered to be the evidence of theory of evolution. Vestigial organ was originally functional for the ancestor. However, due to the change of environment, it gradually lost its function and became dispensable. For example, although the high length of wires and snakes, although the high length of wires and snakes degenerate, there still remain the bones of their high length. Therefore, evolutionarily, we can say that they had the same ancestor and are both evolved from four-length animals, classified as vertebrate. In the past, looking at physical feature and behavior was the only way to determine how closely related two organisms are. Anatomy records provide important evidence for evolution of species. Thank you.
Opposition constructed.
Hello everyone, I'm Ruby. Today my partner Alice and I are going to prove the theory of evolution is true by genetic evidence. Genetic evidence, also called molecular evidence, use molecular to study the relationship between one species and other species. These molecules include DNA, RNA, protein, and ribosomes. DNA in every cell reflects each creature's unique identity and how closely related to one another. And it is molecular that makes up an organism's genome in every cell. It consists of genus, which is the basis of our tissue and function. DNA influences an organism's growing up and the physiology of our blood, bone, and brains. So, it is especially important in the study of evolution. The amount of difference in DNA is a way to show the difference between species and thus we can know how closely related to each other. Through comparison of DNA sequence, we can ensure and strengthen the research in the molecular biology or revise some problem in the evolution evidence. For example, the genetic difference between human and chimpanzee is 1.2%, and the difference between gorilla and human is 1.6%. That means chimpanzee and human are more closely related to each other than the gorilla or any other primate. Thank you.
Next 6, opposition constructed.
Honorable guests, my name is Eden Liu, and I will be talking about emotions and feelings. But before I start, I will define evolution psychology, which my partner will elaborate more later. Evolution psychology is a feeling, adapting, and evolving. Now that stated, I'll move on to my points. Love is a great characteristic from God. In Oxford Dictionary, it says that love is a strong feeling of affection. Animals don't have this. They have instincts. Yes, they do mate, and they fight with each other to win over a partner, but that's how they're created. Our common ancestors didn't know what love is. So then how can we suddenly love one another? Love cannot be self-taught, and I know evolution is all about change and making itself better, but evolution doesn't stay evolving your emotions to a complex level. An outside force had to show us what love is to help us understand. Romans 5:2-5, and I'll only quote the last part. God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. God's love had to be poured into our hearts. This means that an outside force showed us love and gave us love to know what it is. Like, we all love our family and friends and close relatives, but why? Because in Genesis 1:27, it says that God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Man and female, he created them. This verse just proves that how we're created through God, and that our hands, our mindsets, our bodies, our language is all from him. 1 John 4:19 says that we love each other because he first loved us. That goes back to my point, because an outside force had to show us what love is so that we can love one another. Science cannot explain love, anger, jealousy, or any emotion. It can tell us what happens to the body when we use our emotions, but it doesn't say where it comes from. This is why creationism is true, because it's clear about where non-physical things come from. Thank you.
Opposition, rebuttal.
Good morning. My name is Carmen, and my team and I firmly believe that creation is true and evolution is merely a theory. Let me jump right into my main points. My first one is how the body reacts when feeling these emotions. For example, fear and the pumping of the heart. The heart pumps blood faster in order to give blood to the areas that need the blood the most. Now, evolutionists would say that organisms adapted this characteristic. But in order to do so, the body needed to be fully developed. When the body is not fully developed, how do evolutionists explain that? Let me ask you this: how are they able to adapt this reaction if their body is incapable of doing this thing in order to survive? They would just pass out or die when they feel the fear because the heart isn't pumping blood fast enough. So this proves that evolutionary psychology, which my teammate has defined, is false, because organisms wouldn't be able to adapt to this feeling of fear and the effects to the body it would bring. My next point is evolutionary psychology is more ideological than scientific. They are unable to look back, and there is no physical evidence like the fossil record. They aren't able to go to a fossil and say, so when you feel anger, do you, oh wait, it's not talking, it's dead. So they are unable to analyze the organism's past emotions and feelings. Their hypothesis, evolutionists who support evolutionary psychology, their hypothesis is impossible to test. Their theory is based on assumptions and ideas. My next point is the emotional tether, which my teammate talked about, this love. In order to survive, organisms would have to learn how to reproduce with each other. But then they wouldn't be able to feel that emotional tether. That is, like my teammate said, love cannot be self-taught. So evolutionists have continuously failed to explain this love that we feel. It is God-based, this marriage. Humans aren't able to evolve into this idea of marriage. It is, a creator gave his creation love and emotions. Thank you.
The sixth proposition, rebuttal.
Hello, I'm Alice. I'm going to explain more detail about genetic evidence. We could think that is the DNA difference caused the evolution. Human children inherited 3 billion base pairs of DNA from each parent, but they are not an exact duplicate. The rate of change has been measured to an average of 70 base out of our 6 billion total per generation. So, as we go back on a family tree, there are more and more genetic differences between us and our ancestors. For example, there will be about 140 differences between your DNA and your 4 grandparents, and 210 difference between your DNA and your 8 great-grandparents, and so on. That enables us to predict that the amount of genetic diversity will be higher with the change of time. In addition, a team shows that the mutation in a specific gene, known as Hox gene, can lead to big change in the body. The researchers said this big change could have played a significant role in the evolution of some new species, like insects, which have only 6 legs and appeared suddenly 400 million years ago. However, it's just a new view to evolution, but unconvinced due to lack of evidence. Thank you.
The seventh proposition constructed.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Vivian. My partner and I are going to talk about atavism, one of the evidence to prove that evolution is truth. So what is atavism? In biology, an atavism is an evolutionary throwback, such as traits repairing that had disappeared generations before. Atavisms can occur in several ways. One way is when genes for previously existing phenotypical features are preserved in DNA, and these become expressed through a mutation that either knocks out the overriding genes for the new traits or make the old traits override the new one. Evolutionarily, traits that have disappeared phenotypical do not necessarily disappear for an organism's DNA. The gene sequence often remains, but is inactive. Such an unused gene may remain in the genome for many generations. As long as the gene remains intact, a fault in the genetic control suppressing the gene can lead to it being expressed again. And my partner will give some examples about atavism. Thank you.
The seventh proposition constructed.
Let's turn to the debate of macroevolution. So the first point I would like to make is that microevolution does not prove macroevolution. Macroevolution occurs outside of a species or above a species level and is sometimes defined as a genetic change on a grand scale. Microevolution occurs within one species and is defined as small variations in genetic material. And microevolution has been overwhelmingly proven and accepted by creationist and non-creationist scientists alike. But just because microevolution is true does not mean that macroevolution is true. People oftentimes use microevolution to try and justify macroevolution, which is misleading and incorrect, because the two are very different. The second point I would like to make is that macroevolution is not a proven fact. No new species has ever been produced, let alone a basic kind that could evolve into something else, even though scientists say they must be able to replicate a theory to prove it true. Also, macroevolution has never been observed. There are no statistically significant levels of new genetic information that have ever been observed. But if people believe something happened, then they need to be able to prove it. So, how can we take this theory of macroevolution as scientific when there is so little observable evidence for genetic change? My point is this, and it's simple. Macroevolution is a theory in itself that is evolving and has never been proven. Thank you.
Seventh opposition rebuttal.
So I am Andrew from the side that is trying to prove that evolution is not fact, and I would like to start off my speech by elaborating some of my teammates' points. She stated that the macroevolution was never proven or was never observed. There was no stats whatsoever to prove that macroevolution ever took place. And at the same time, microevolution cannot be used to prove macroevolution as true. At the same time, if we look in my opponent's teams, their whole entire team, their arguments, none of them ever explained the macroevolution as well. For example, they had brought out the example of how dinosaurs and birds, how it was a possibility for dinosaurs to turn into birds. However, they also stated in that very speech they stated that these are birds, they have feathers, and it would be hard to categorize them as dinosaurs. Since macroevolution could not be proven as true, that means that the birds that they have mentioned they did not come from the dinosaurs, because evidently these birds are different species from these dinosaurs. At the same time, my opponents are always talking about how natural selection and adaptation is supporting microevolution. And I admit microevolution is a well-explained and a very well explained statement. However, that does not prove that macroevolution ever took place. Previously, my opponent had also talked about the similarity of the anatomy. That because of the similarities in the anatomy that it can prove the tree of life. However, the tree of life is a well-explained theory, but since radioactive dating, my opponent's criteria of time had been proved invalid. The time necessary for the tree of life to be true is absent, which this effectively disproves the mere existence of the tree of life. And so with those points stated, I would like to say that since my opponents cannot prove the macroevolution theory to be true, it wouldn't be right for them to say that evolution is a fact, since if something has to be a fact, it has to be entirely true. Thank you.
The seventh proposition.
Hi everyone, my name is Wendy and I'm going to give some complement of atavism. Okay? First, this is a donkey and this is one of its foot. Okay, and you can see the picture shows an ectrotos on horses, and it's just like this is the next one, ectrotos. So you can see it's just like the Arctic horses. Okay? Yeah. Okay. And the next, aphism have been observed in some kinds of humans as well. For example, let's look at this picture. And this shows the bone of humans' pelvis here. Okay, and you can see that coccygeal vertebra. Yeah, here. Coccygeal vertebra. Okay. This is vestigial structures on human, and we don't use it now, but sometimes we can found that. Oh no, not found. A baby was born. A baby was born, but he had tail. Yeah. So this is aphism. Just like okay, the baby been born with a vestigial tail. So we call that coccygeal process. And aphism can also be seen in humans who possess large teeth, like some of this is not a baby, but some baby they have large teeth just like those of other primates. Okay. The last example. Yeah, we can see the pig have lots of nipples, and this is just like sometimes we found that the monkeys often the monkey just have 2 nipples, but it had 6. Okay, next one. Wow, human 6 nipples. Wow, aphisms. Wow, one direction 4 nipples. Aphism. Thank you.
Examine those pictures. Now, the 8th proposition
Okay, good morning everyone. My name is Jack, and Today, my teammate and I are going to talk about artificial selection. And before I start my part, I want to ask you a question. Some of you mentioned that you talk about the creator of life. But do you know who he is? I mean, so far there is no any scientific evidence indicate that this creator actually exists. I mean, none of you can prove it. Okay, move on to my section. In addition to nature selection, there is another important fact that supports the theory of evolution called artificial selection. Artificial selection is also known as selective breeding. It is similar to natural selection and can be realized as a kind of natural selection pressure like given by a human. It's a result of human conduct breeding specialized in specific traits, which can strengthen some traits while weakening others. Most of the artificial selection cases are deliberate, while a few are unintentional. And Darwin was the first scientist to discuss the theory of artificial selection in his book, Origin of Species, in 1859. However, actually it had been put into practice for several thousand years. Since ancient time, our ancestors have been applying artificial selection on some domesticated species. Like selecting appropriate individual with feature they want and make those individuals over and over again. By continuous doing this for a long time, people can make those individuals, flora or fauna, show ideal traits. On one hand, artificial selection can prove the reality of natural selection, and on the other hand, it strongly supports the theory of evolution, and that's my point of view. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Gabrielle, and I am on the side that believes that evolution is false. And before I continue with my argument, our team would like to say about God that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Now, the origin of life in the universe are very relevant parts to the theory of evolution. The proposition has just chosen not to talk about it. Evolution assumes that natural processes can explain everything, and therefore, there needs to be a reliable atheistic origin of the universe and life needed to support this assumption. Evolution has so many conclusions, yet it has a very weak basis of belief. The team has been building a skyscraper with no foundation. Now, I will be talking about quantum mechanics, which are often said to disprove God, and it's basically a study at the subatomic level. Many evolutionists believe that quantum fluctuations, are able to produce something from nothing in a vacuum, and that something called the Wheeler-DeWitt equation states that space can rapidly expand on its own. The problem with this saying that disproves God is because that empty space, a vacuum, is not nothing. Space is something. They are not proving that the universe comes from nothing. They're proving that the universe is expanding from already existing space. Further, the greater the energy of a quantum fluctuation, the shorter time it lasts. This is because of a limit called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Particles can only appear and disappear for very short intervals. Therefore, the only way our universe, which is obviously huge, that can exist is if the total net energy of the universe is zero. And there's absolutely no way to prove this. There's no way to study this. And atheistic evolutionists just simply state that the net energy is zero without having any evidence for this. Our team believes that this is a very circular reasoning because there's no support for it. Therefore, a universe being able to create itself is a logical fallacy, and it does not in any way disprove the existence of a God or create a naturalistic origin of the universe for evolution to happen. Thank you.
Hey people, my name is Yosa from Morrison Academy Kaohsiung, and I'm here to debate why evolution is a fiction. First of all, I will start off with rebuttal to my opponent. My opponent said that artificial selection proves that evolution and natural selection is true, but I don't see why it's like that. Artificial selection is just forced mutation. Therefore, it can't be used to prove that natural selection is true. My opponent just simply said that it proves it, but he didn't say that how it proves it and how it helps the evolution, this theory, to become a true fact. Right now, I will try to defend my teammates' evidences. My teammate said something about quantum fluctuation, which says that there are small particles from nowhere, but I don't think it's right to say that the space is nothing. Like, it's just not right to say that space is nothing because you want one theory to become true. So therefore, that's why I think that evolution is just a fiction, not a fact. Thank you.
Opposition to rebuttal.
Hello everyone, I'm Judy, and today I want to support my teammate Jake, and our topic is artificial selection. And you asked that how artificial selection proves the evolution, and I want to give you some example. The effect of artificial selection can be significant. Via this process, the yield of wheat and the growth rate of plants, the reproduction rate of cows, and tolerance to disease rise profoundly. In some cases, animals even change their appearance drastically. Take our faithful friend dogs as an example. There are hundreds of kinds of dogs nowadays have various characteristics. And all of them are posteriorities of an ancient species. However, the genotype and phenotype of those dogs are obviously different from their ancestors. In summary, artificial selection has proved one thing, that evolution is a successive process that needs a long period of time. No species can suddenly get new traits and become a new species. It takes time to accumulate traits between generations until all individuals in a group share the same traits. And then this group of animals can be regarded as a new species. That is a truth that history tells us, and it can be re-examined. Thus, artificial selection not only can test the rationality of natural selection, but also make the theory of evolution more persuasive. Thank you.
Now, the proposition summation.
Hello everyone, my name is Jason. And now I'm going to conclude what we talked about today. The evolution is change in the heritable characteristics of biological populations over successive generations. So the change is very important to evolution. According to the evidence we talked about today, we can find the change over successive generations. Depending on fossil record, we can find many transitional species. It can prove that the evolution is a success process, and we can see that the relationship between the generations. And the distribution of related species in geography shows that the isolated land areas and the isolated groups often evolve their own distinct plants and animal communities. It means that the species evolve according to their survival environment. With anatomy, we can find that the structure of organs of some creatures are similar, but the function of organs is different. It also shows that the species survive according to their survival environment. They develop a different way to survive, but they also have the relationship in their organism. As technology advances, we find genes show that the life message. So genes can tell us the species relationship accurately. With this technology, we can find the similarity between generations. And the activism shows the evolution is true. Sometimes the characteristics of ancestors will show in their generations. We also use the artificial selection to prove that the natural selection is real. It supports that the theory of evolution. In the end, I want to say the evidence will talk. Because of this evidence, we believe that the evolution is true. So, thanks for your listening.
Alright. Hello, my name is Tim, and I will be concluding what my team has said about creation. We talked about the teleological argument, which states that something that is complex cannot just come together, but that there has to be a designer, such as a watch. There has to be a watchmaker to make it. The second thing we talked about was that the fossils concluded that the events in the Bible had actually happened, such as the flood, because we had found fossils of sea creatures way above sea level, which would only get there if the water levels had risen. We also talked about the quantum fluctuations and how that, as my teammate Gabby has stated, that there is not enough energy for the universe to sustain itself if it had come out of a vacuum, and that a vacuum of itself is a thing. We also talked about developing emotions and feelings and how animals don't feel, and that you can't talk to them and have a genuine relationship with them because they only have instincts. We also talked about microbiology and that you cannot prove evolution through microbiology because it has not been proven and it has not been tested. So in conclusion, there's insufficient evidence to state that evolution is true. Thank you.
Okay, since you guys have done a great job on time control, we still have some time left. Now this is time for rebuttal. If you feel very passionate about to challenge your opponent, this is your time. Go up to the podium. You have 1 minute to challenge your opponent. This is rebuttal. Free rebuttal time. Anybody can go. Anybody can go. Free rebuttal. Okay.
1 minute. Wait, can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know how in evolution we have that graph where humans came from simple life forms into a fish, into an ape, into human. So through that there must be these transitional forms, right? But in the fossil record, they have failed to find fossils in that transitional form from a fish to an ape or from an ape to a human. So because it doesn't make sense because fish can't give birth to apes. That doesn't make any sense. So I'd like to ask my opponents to how, through the fossil record, how are we able to conclude that apes are able to evolve into human, or simple life forms are able to evolve into humans, these complex multicellular organisms? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carmen. Okay, proposition team, do you have answer to her? She challenged you. Team B can do that too. You don't have answer for it, but you have a question. Okay, go ahead. He's actually on the same side. He will. debate on the same side as you next week, but he now has a question.
Now, this is what proposition side, I suppose. Yes. Now, there's a problem you said about quantum physics stuff, quantum mechanism stuff. You said vacuum is not nothing. Agree. Quantum physics never said nothing. Vacuum is nothing. Space-time, about quantum physics, you have to understand something about space-time theory. You can't say space is independent of time. So when you talk about there is something, the existence itself, the space itself, you can't use it to actually disprove that, the biology, something about the existence itself is wrong. And how about the universe expansion? When you talk about expansion, that is something far beyond our physics. We're only a theory here. So no one says it's true. No one says that proves evolution. So how come that exists in this topic? Now, that's my problem. Okay.
Okay. Anyone wants to rebut him or answer him?
Our team chose to bring that up because we were trying to look at the sort of explanations many atheistic evolutionists have to the origin of the universe, and this is sort of what we found. We know that it's beyond all our knowledge, but we can see from also our understanding of knowledge that it's not logically possible. Thank you.
Okay, two more exchanges, then we'll go to refreshments. Okay, go ahead, Grace.
Our opponents have told a lot about, the structure of the anatomy of all these different animals are similar, therefore a common answer, therefore evolution. But you guys are assuming that God would have created everything absolutely different in order to find no link, because any link that you guys can find between animals, you guys use to support evolution. But God created all of us to live on the same earth, in the same environment, under very much the same conditions. Why would he have made us absolutely different? No, it makes sense that he would have made us in some way similar. Thank you.
Okay, first, I don't believe God. Yes, you tell me that God teach us how to love, but my mom teach me. And I don't believe God, but I know how to love. Yes, and I don't know him. Please tell me, who is he and where is he? In here? No, I don't know. I can't find him. So I don't think God exists yes. Yeah. I don't think God really exists. Yes. Thank you.
According to evolution, whatever changes a species have is according to what they need for survival. However, if you think about it, the development of emotional feelings that humans have is not necessary for us to survive in the wild. In fact, the development of emotions needs the enlargement of the brain, which also decreases the sensitivity of the ears, the nose, and the eyes. In other words, the development of emotional feelings is, in a way, something that makes it harder for humans to survive in the wild. And so how would the opposing side explain why we actually have these emotional feelings?
Okay, thank you. Anyone? Going once? Going twice? Okay. Michael, you want to do that?
All right. No one's going to talk about it? All right. Okay, about emotion stuff. You guys talk about emotion, but there's a problem here. There is something in human you have to learn about psychology. It's called self-conscious. When you develop self-conscious about emotion, after that you come emotion. So self-conscious actually appears when we're about a year and a half. When you look in the mirror, you know that is yourself. You don't actually think that's something else, that's someone else. So actually, we, human, actually develop self-conscious by some progress within our brain, not actually started when we're young, not just started when we were born. Not when we can see, we don't know we are ourselves. So such as you can't actually remember the first time you know where you come from or when you're actually here. That's actually how the emotion comes from, not actually from the, some God stuff or anything. Of course you can believe in that. I'm not saying that's wrong, but there's no fact about this. Thank you.
Over refreshment. Before we dismiss, our Captain Jason has some gifts to give you as a token of our appreciation.